Hi everyone, in today's video we'll be taking a look at the Sony A6400 and see if it's right for you. I had a bit of time to take a look at this camera, play around with it, see how it performed outdoors, and see how the colors and lighting came about for videos and for stills. As much as it is their APS-C sensor, it is part of Sony's, honestly, semi-professional line. It's something that you can have about with the family, take pictures of the family trips, but at the same time you can have access to a lot of professional features and high resolution quality imagery. For example, this has 6K downsampling to 4K, which gives it an incredible video performance. That's why a lot of people use these cameras for professional to semi-professional video shoots. I took a look at a few comparisons between 4K 30 frames, 1080 30 frames, 60 frames, and 120 in S-Log2 and in no picture profiles, just to see how far you can push the image. Obviously you'll notice that in S-Log2 you'll have a lot more leeway. The non-graded gives you a nice flat gray and a very high dynamic range. I specifically pointed it towards the sun to see how much you can get back from the highlights and how much you can bring down the shadows. The results were interesting, very nice, very dynamic. I boosted up the contrast a little bit and I got a very nice image. Obviously the no picture profile gives it a much harder image to work with. Right out of the camera, very nice, but it could go and perform a bit better. Where I found that this camera was very good was the sharpness, the resolution of the imagery. Obviously, the autofocus is going to be interesting, especially in a mirrorless camera. You're able to get a lot of quick focus on this, especially when you're on multi-focus option, and I choose the wide to really get as much option as possible. It detects it pretty well. Sometimes I did find that you really needed to tell the camera what you wanted to focus on. So for example, a shot where I was trying to focus on a tree branch sticking out of a tree, while I was focusing on the tree itself and not the branch, and the branch was in the middle of the frame. So it was having a tough time. It was going, I think, for the closest thing. But I mean, all in all, very good, very accurate. Moving objects as well, worked very well. But obviously this is with good lighting. I wasn't able to test it in low lighting performance to see how it worked. The ergonomics of the camera, what I did appreciate was and obviously I'm matching it here with the 18-105 f4 lens, which is a very great lens, especially for an APS-C sensor, because you have obviously that crop with the APS-C. You're able to get from 18 to 105, which is a great range. I mean, you have pretty much everything you need to do. So when it comes to ergonomics, the fact that I had this bigger lens on the camera body was an additional benefit for me that's used to shooting with full frame or DSLRs. This is definitely an added bonus because this lens allows you to have a better grip on the camera. The camera itself, just the body, is very thin. The grip is very short. So it's not a camera that you're going to be handling it for, let's say, professional shoots where you're going to have to be shooting long periods of time. I'm thinking wedding photographers and event photographers, they're not necessarily going to enjoy gripping this all day because of the ergonomics of it. That being said, it is very light. So if you're shooting with this, you will get less tired. Obviously, carrying all that extra gear is tiresome, but it could possibly be a good B camera for a second camera that you have around your sling, that you just, for a specific prime lens that you're using. I'm thinking again for wedding photographers and whatnot, they'll have, let's say, their A9 or their A6400 right, on their main camera, and then they'll be switching around with the 6400, which I think could be a great combo. One thing I did appreciate was the tilt screen. A lot of cameras in the same price group, they have this swivel screen. This one has a tilt screen, which is a nice bonus, but I did find myself sometimes needing an extra little bit of angle curve that I couldn't get because of this. For example, let's say I'm recording myself, like right now, it'd be very difficult for me to see myself. I'd have to flip this, and you'll see it doesn't flip all the way up, so you can't see yourself. But to get those low angle shots, or I was taking a picture of a tree that was higher, I was shooting like this, that's very good because you have that extra angle. You can pull this out like this and get that high angle shot as well, and it works very well for that. When it comes to the viewfinder, it is very small and the quality is there, but you don't have a lot of backing around it, so you don't have something that actually goes around the form factor of your eye or your area, so you don't actually have, let's say, necessarily a lot of blockage from the sun. It's not the optimal scenario. Usually I use the viewfinder for a mirrorless camera when I can't see the display very well, which is the case on this one. The display is not going to be very, very bright in an outdoor situation, and it doesn't necessarily give you the best indicator of what you're shooting. So I ended up looking at the histogram a lot more because the viewfinder or the screen weren't necessarily as precise as I'd like them to be. One thing I did enjoy from this is the button layout, all except one, the record button for video. Very awkward to have to kind of angle your arm here, and not very handy. Besides that, you can adjust them, obviously, aperture, shutter, or vice versa. The ISO is right here. It gets some getting used to, obviously. Coming from the Canon line myself, it's not something that I'm familiar with, but it's something that I could very easily see myself adapt to. The one thing that I really had a hard time adapting to was the zoom. I couldn't find the zoom speed because this is a lens that has an electronic zoom, so it's not something that you manually turn, and there's no gears inside the lens. It's all automatic, so you would, let's say, zoom like this, and when you turn the ring, the computer will tell the lens to change focal length. So that's why there's also a zoom in and out button. It's good, it's nice because you're able to really get smooth pans, but it's not quick enough. For example, you see you're doing street photography, you see something that you need to take a picture of, you know, you have those extra few seconds of having to adjust your zoom and not being fast enough. You have to turn it maybe once or twice, one or two full turns to be able to get the right focal length that you want to go from 18 to 105, which is a huge range. Well, you just lost a shot, right? So it's not something that I found very nice. Maybe if I would have had the opportunity to adjust the speed of the response, that could have been an interesting setting to play with. Besides that, the layout itself was very interesting. I didn't have an issue finding anything except maybe for the menu for different types of specific features that I was looking for. But I mean, once you get around knowing a bit how Sony menus work, you'll get the hang of it. Plus you have the favorite section that you can just select your most used features and put them there, so they're easy access. The memory card slot, it's right here on the bottom next to the battery. By the way, you'll need an extra few batteries because these drain quickly, especially if you're doing 4K and whatnot. These will go fast. So the SD card is right here, but it's right next to the door, which is very awkward to kind of position your finger and push the SD card out and then try to pull it out because it is facing the other way. It's not, the SD card usually faces you, so there's that little groove that you can stick your nail into and kind of pull the SD card out. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. This one is facing the other way, so you don't have that groove. So you really have to clip it from the side and pull it out, and that's very awkward to do because obviously it slips. It's not, you don't have a lot of grip. It just comes out a little bit, so it's not the ideal scenario. On the other side of the camera here, you're going to have your HDMI port, your micro USB, and you're also going to have your plug-in microphone 3.5mm jack. You have also the flash, the pop-up flash. It's there. Pop it up with a button and then manually press it down. The slow-mo on this was very interesting as well. I shot in 120 1080 and it was very, very good. I was able to get a very smooth pan when I was moving quite quickly. So basically I did a quick movement, pan motion, and I was able to get a very, when I slowed it down about 25%, I was able to get a very smooth pan. And so that right there shows the potential of a slow motion feature like this. I also was able to capture really, really cool slow-mo, for example, pouring liquid into a glass, all these type of things. You can use them in so many scenarios. That being said, you have to be consider that you have to bring your shutter speed all the way up to 250 for the 120 frames per second. So it is, you know, give and take, but I mean, you adapt and whatnot. Another thing that I have to point out, S-Log2 native ISO is 500. It's fine. I didn't know that, so I didn't bring an ND filter. But if I would have known, I would have brought an ND filter, because shooting outdoors at f4, 30 frames per second at 60 shutter speed, you're at 500 ISO. Most of the things are going to be blown out because you're outdoors. So yes, I can bring up my aperture. Problem is, I wanted to get the shallow depth of field because that particular shot required. So yes, you will probably need an ND filter if you're shooting an S-Log, especially outdoors. So I just switched to the Sony A6400 to give you a comparison of the 4K 30 frames on that camera. I wanted to show you especially the skin tones. This is shot in S-Log2, so it gives you an idea of how much you can do also in post. I'm going to have it graded and ungraded to give you an idea of how much range you can get. All in all, great camera. It's right up there with the semi-professional lines. I would definitely see this in the hands of somebody that just wants a great all-in-all camera for the family, take pictures, going on trips. Form factor is very interesting. Or the person who wants an additional camera body to match with their existing Sony set. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share the video if you liked it. Like it, give it a big old thumbs up, and take a look at our other videos. If you have any questions or you have any comments, please leave them in the section below. And yeah, I'll see you next time.